Okay, I'm live. Just going to give it some time for you folks to get the notification. Start checking out the stream here. Just a sec. I'm trying to find something here real quick. Android. No, not on device. We don't want that on device. Um, desktop. Desktop. Yeah, let's try that. Click on color. Click on colors and select dark under choose your color. Click on colors. Choose dark. Change the setting to enable relaunch. Oh, you have to relaunch the browser. Okay, well, I guess I won't be doing that. No, I won't be doing that. Let me just see if there's some notifications going out here. Let me just check on the old Facebook page. Unfortunately, I've had to reduce my StreamYard's package. Actually, I was using the Pro package, but it was getting a little bit expensive for the small amount of viewership that my streams receive. So I unfortunately I had to scale back. So I'm down in a lower version. Unfortunately, I can only stream to 3 destinations. So I went with the Facebook, the YouTube, and the Rumble. The Odyssey, it's a great platform. I wish I could add that one, but very few people actually watch my content over there. And Twitter, same thing. I used to add Twitter into the live streams too for a destination, but very few people even know that kind of stuff takes place over on Twitter yet. Anyway, so I'm sticking with the 3 tried and true, where at least get a couple be right. And even that, who's to know how that's going to pan out. But anyways, let me just check and make sure everything's going good here. Yes, it does look like over on the old Facebook that seems to be working. Why is captions on? We can turn that off. We don't need the captions on. Okay, so that's fine. Now let me just check on the Rumble here. Let me check on the Rumble. Just check on the Rumble. Whoa. Okay. So YouTube's going. YouTube's working. And I hope, by the way, I hope everyone's doing great, having a great long weekend. I know I have been. Got a lot done this weekend, actually, which is why I actually have the time to actually do this live stream. I didn't know if I'd have the time, but I said, you know what? It's been a while since I've done a live stream. Let's just try to get something done here. And there's so much to talk about. And the fact that it is Canada Day long weekend, I just felt, I have to make this happen. So I got everything done. Pretty much the minute I got home Friday till yesterday, I made sure I got everything done. All right. Yep. So Rumble's working over there. Let's see what we got here. Oh, by the way, for those of you who depend on which platform you're watching, if you're not familiar, I do have, like I say, an account on Rumble. So if you wouldn't mind going over there, maybe hitting the old follow, actually even give this a watch over on Rumble, or of course YouTube if you prefer, because yeah, still going strong on the YouTube. All right. All right, I'm just going to close those up now so we're not using up too much bandwidth. I'll close that. There we go. And now we're back. We're back. All right. Like I said, just give it a couple more minutes. It typically takes, a little while. Hey, people might even be working today, even though it's technically a holiday, although it's not Canada Day. So I guess it would depend on where you work in what part of the country, I guess. But here in old New Brunswick, even those of us in the construction trades have this day off. So that's great. That is great. Once again, gives me the opportunity to do a live stream like this and cover some really important stuff. Which is, and of course, the question for this live stream is, what does it mean to be a Canadian in 2023? That's Quite the question as far as I'm concerned. Very important question. I'm just going to check. Actually, I noticed there have a couple people have joined the stream already. What's going on, David? Very nice to see you in the live stream. Really appreciate that. Thanks for joining. And Gato, howdy. How you doing, Gato? Thanks for joining the stream, my friend. Hope you're having a great long weekend as well. I believe David, if it's the David I'm thinking of, you're down in Texas, so your celebrations are tomorrow. Or well, this is the problem, right? Whether you're Canadian or American, right? Is celebrate. What are we celebrating? Exactly, right? Um, what is exactly today, right? What is it about being Canadian that makes you proud today? Hmm. Hmm. That's a really good question, right? It's a really good question. Now, off the top of my head, my first initial response would be, oh, all them amazing Canadian truckers that stood up for freedom and against the tyrant, the Trudeau liberals, against the vaccine mandates and travel thousands of miles in the cold, cold, cold of winter to use their voices, right? They're Canadian, but look at how they were treated by other Canadians, right? Not so good. Not so good. I mean, to the point where Trudeau invoked basically a War Measures Act, right? Like a full on tyrannical measure to counter people peacefully protesting or stand in defiance against government overreach and authoritarian edicts. Is that Canadian? I mean, it sounds like it's kind of a split there. Sounds like a divide, right? Because Trudeau and his ilk and the people that follow him and that support his authoritarian mandates, well, they would call themselves Canadians as well, right? So, bit of a problem there. Bit of a problem there. But once again, we're gonna get into all this stuff. Trust me, there's a lot to think about. And yeah, for if you're a really hardcore ultra nationalist, warning, trigger warning. Yes, some content may offend you during this live stream. Yes, David from Texas. Texas. Oh, if all else fails, we got places like where David's residing. There's one of the last bastions of freedom. That's what I love about Americans. You know, once again, I am Canadian, but boy, I got to tell you, folks, I'm quite envious and or not resentful, quite envious of the fact that the Americans are showing a whole lot of gumption, a whole lot of willingness to fight in much, much larger numbers, and not just at the grassroots level. We're seeing now even at the political, like the judicial. I mean, think about just what's happening. I mean, once again, Trump, right? By appointing those Supreme Court justices, actually, let me try to keep myself closer to this mic because I know as I get moved further away, the sound kind of jumps in and out. But if you think about it, so what's going on? Just last week, as an example, right? Boom, Supreme Court justices striking down affirmative action. What an amazing turn of events! What an amazing change of precedent historically, or at least for now, for decades up until now. Yeah, basically, you were judged based on not the content of your character or not your competence, not your intellectual capacity, not how hard you worked, right? None of that. No, well, sure, some of that might have been entered into the equation. What was the big thing, right? What was the dominant aspect in terms of whether you get into some of these elite colleges or universities, right? Well, a lot of it had to do with what color your skin was. And it actually it's funny. Like I was mentioned to a couple of guys at work. It's quite amazing. It actually took Asian Americans, right? Right? Not those white people that are just right constantly talked about it in terms of what the old establishment, right, or whatever, what would represent old America kind of thing. Yeah, actually, it was Asians that stood up and said, you know what? Stop being racist. Stop picking others and destroying my ability to do what I want to do just by sheer fact that I happen to do better than others. And it's unfair, right? It's unfair that I did some better than someone else. And once again, what the skin color shouldn't really be brought into the equation as far as I'm concerned. But yeah, so there's that. And then of course there's the other one with the Supreme Court. Let me just bring that up here. Actually, I might as well bring it on the screen. Um, Yeah, so let's do this first. Let's do the affirmative action one first. Bring that on. Present. Yeah, so U.S. court, CBC News had reported, must have really bothered them to have to report this. Because as we know, the folks at the CBC, not big fans of competence in terms of how the outcomes, right? No, they're all about equity. U.S. court strikes severe blow to affirmative action. Here's what's next. Ruling expected to have big consequences for many U.S. colleges that consider race in admissions. So once again, if you're on the side of, oh, you should include race into admissions, well, once again, why? Why? I would ask. Never heard a good answer for that. Heard lots of legalese and political answers, but I've never heard an actually objective, reasoned argument, right? Where we said, okay, that makes sense. I mean, not have yet to hear that. U.S. Supreme Court struck a severe blow to affirmative action on Thursday in the court's latest conservative shift, upending decades of precedent allowing race-based college admissions. Now comes the effort to resurrect the program's stated goal, diversifying America's top schools. Harvard University promised to spend the coming months seeking ways to preserve those values in its admission policy, the White House said. The White House said it will seek ideas at a summit, produce a report, and collect data illustrating various types of inequities in college admissions. We're not going to let this break us, President Joe Biden said from the White House, where he disparaged the right-leaning court. This is not a normal court anyway, so once again, pure politics. But I'll just, like I say, no point in spending a whole lot of time with that. But I will make sure to place this in the description of the live stream. Now, here's the next one. So in this particular one, U.S. Supreme Court says Christian web designer can refuse to serve same-sex weddings. So remember you got to bake my cake, right? Well, according to the Supreme Court, not anymore. Not anymore, right? That's what freedom's all about. And freedom, sometimes it's not, everybody's autonomy and personal freedom being respected. Yeah, maybe all the time doesn't work out, so we're all like kumbaya and everything. But at the very least, freedom, right? It puts freedom in focus and center stage. To me, that's the most important thing, no matter who you are, no matter what's between your legs or what color your skin is. Conservative justices formed 6-3 majority in case that Colorado woman filed preemptively. So this is a Thomson Reuters article being copy and pasted by CBC on June 30th, 2023. In a blow to LGBTQ rights, the U.S. Supreme Court on Friday ruled that the constitutional right to free speech allows certain businesses to refuse to provide services for same-sex weddings, ruling in favor of a web designer who cited her Christian beliefs in challenging a Colorado anti-discrimination law. The justices in a 6-3 decision, authored by conservative Justice Neil Gorsuch, overturned the lower court's ruling that had rejected Denver area business owner Lori Smith's bid for an exemption from a Colorado law that prohibits discrimination based on sexual orientation and other factors. So once again now, folks, now me personally, right, in most areas or circumstances, you would just want to cater to or service all people. But if it does go against your religious belief, that is actually one of the founding principles in the documents in the Bill of Rights is freedom of religion, freedom of thought, freedom of association, and all those things have to mean something. And this decision actually, enshrines that and sets that in stone in law. So, like I say, whether you agree, and I can tell you, there's a lot of examples where you might say, "Oh, well, that's not fair that they won't do." Not fair or not, it's actually in terms of being treated equally, right? It is giving people the ability to be equally treated in terms of, hey, you do you and I do me. There's no forced association here. The minute you try to force things, right, that's where the problems usually arise, right? It's forcing, compelling, mandating, right? People don't like to be forced, no matter what side of the political aisle you're on. And that, at the end of the day, is something that the Americans are showing that, yeah, their Constitution, their Bill of Rights, it actually means something, right? What's happening in Canada? Well, it seems to be going the other way around, where it's just nonstop, almost on a daily basis. More force, more compulsion, more coercion, right? More forced association. And this pretense by those who are trying to push that stuff That's just what going to make us a much more happier, prosperous, right, unified country by using force as a means to an end, imposing your will on others. You think that works out well? Right? No, most certainly not. Definitely not for those who are having that thrust upon them, right? That was all I'll bring this on off to there. Like I say, just two articles, but I figured, hey, listen, America, and then what was the other one? Oh, and of course, America once again, folks. Here's the comparison and contrast to American, their ideals, the principles, and the things that they stand for. So, as we know, Bill C-18 is just the next in line. After Bill C-11 got passed, and the Canadian government, it's full on attempt of dominating, controlling, and dictating everything that we see or hear on the internet, and more forced wealth and income redistribution. So, Bill C-18 basically suggested that, hey, because people like us, right, the end users can share links to, here's a perfect example. So I share a tremendous amount of links to CBC News, of course, mostly to point out their lies, their hypocrisy, the bullshit that they espouse, their rhetoric, right, the propaganda. So let's say I place a CBC article on my Facebook page, right? Well, CBC and the established media basically wanted so that Google, Facebook, these companies, these that own these platforms have to pay for the privilege of what? Of me putting a CBC link on my Facebook page. But what happens if someone actually clicks on that link? It literally takes you directly to cbcnews.ca or .com, whatever the hell it is anyways. Oh, it is .ca. So CBC greatly benefits from social media platforms having these links. But once again, first of all, they're already bailed out and propped up by forcefully stealing from we Canadians to the tune of over $1 billion a year for just the CBC. And then there's lots of other. Think about the $600 million bailout that the Trudeau Liberals gave to the other hacks in the establishment media, right? So they already had that, already lots of force and coercion and compulsion, right? But even that wasn't enough. Nope. Like I say, they wanted Google and Facebook to start paying, basically propping up the established media. And I'm very proud to say, of course, it took American companies, right? And yes, we've had a love-hate relationship with some of these big these social media giants, right? No doubt about it. Not saying everything is great on the old home front in that area, in that regard. But I mean, come on. They at least had the courage of their convictions to stand up and say, no. Australia is already trying to bully us into propping up the establishment media and going along with the propaganda and disseminating information based on an ideology and preventing anyone else from. We're already quite well aware of that. And the Canadian government, the Trudeau Liberals, thought, oh, I'd like to get a little piece of that action. And lots of hacks in the establishment media were like, yeah, give me some of that cheddar, right? Well, nope. Facebook and Google, and I hope they actually stick to the guns on this one, to be honest with you, folks, is they said, no, not going to happen. But once again, American companies. I mean, the fact that we have to always rely on American companies anyways, the brain drain from Canada, the fact that Canadians are just not incentivized to be innovative or creative or to function in the market. Why? Because the market is not anything remotely free in this country, right? So top down, heavily regulated. Like I say, even people like myself, nope. I'll try to function and navigate in this system as best I can. But no, there's no incentive for me to ever try to do anything. Because once again, I've seen the people who they just get clobbered over the head. Right. So it disincentivizes anything entrepreneurial or to create or generate anything new or that challenges or that's competitive in any way with the status quo or the current establishment. That's and sadly that's been beaten out of most Canadians. So they don't even try or strive to do such things. And that's a sad reality. But anyways, let me get back in here. I say still got lots to go through, but I wanted to see if there's anyone else in the chat. Yeah, we do. Lion in the sand. What's going on, Lion in the Sand? Thanks for joining the stream, man. Or woman. A belated good candidate to you from an expat in Namibia. Thank you very much. Really appreciate that. And I'm hoping you're having a great weekend as well. I think a lot of us who know history and have ancestors that fought for our freedoms are more intolerant to these government narratives. We see their agenda. Yep. Yeah, I agree. I agree. There's just something, right? And I've always known that my whole life. I couldn't articulate it, explain it as a young man, but I've always been intellectually curious and understood even as a young man. Okay, so we have these things called ethics and morality. Well, then shouldn't things align and be consistent with these very important principles that establish, ethics, right? Whether you're talking about religion, when I was a young man, or government, so the modern religion, that most people, the statheists, right? The big believers is, yes, this it's just nonstop contradictions. They're walking, talking contradictions, and that really irked me, not just as a young man, not just as a child, but even now as a 52-year-old, man, I just to me, and it's I see how destructive it is, not just to people's mind, but their ability to think critically about the things that are so profoundly important, right? Because they just they're they're told all the time that, the words and the language that they typically use and believe that, they should be familiar with is the words can just change to mean whatever some ideologue says at the time, and, I mean, how difficult is that, right? For anyone to have any consistent line of reason or thinking when the words the meaning of these words and the definitions are just arbitrarily changed at will or on a whim. That don't work out very well. What's going on, Stuart Passmore? How you doing, my friend? Oh, by the way, if you do want to join the stream, Stuart, I do remember, I believe it was Proton Mail, right? So just let me know maybe a little bit later on there if you do, and I'll bring you on. Elon, smash that like button. Thank you very much, Stuart. Yes, yes, smash that like button if you wouldn't mind there, folks. Flew the flag upside down and backwards on the day, as that's the state of the nation now. Hey, and that's within your right. I'm sure you may have pissed off some folks. Wouldn't be someone like myself, right? I'm not a flagget. I got nothing against the flag and all, but I'm just not that much of an idol worshiper, I guess you could say, right? Yeah. Um, Not sure which is worse now, US or Canada. Well, this is the thing. Both countries are definitely, like I say, I'm paying attention. Both countries are definitely going through very similar type of things in terms of, ideological battles and stuff. But I got to tell you, folks, the Canadians seem to have a whole lot more fight in them than most Canadians. That I just observing, right? And like I say, at all levels, even. But maybe Canadians will get inspired. I mean, Americans have been leaders for so long, and sadly, most Canadians are followers. But hey, eventually, perhaps more and more Canadians will come around. It's also legal to put another flag above or equal to the US flag, but they did it at the dirty White House. Yeah, yeah. Glad that crappy Pride Month is over, but now I know who's who because they couldn't help but expose themselves openly. I know, like Pride Month, Pride Month. Like how insane is it? I mean, this whole Pride thing, and of course the way it's set up or talked about, it's basically as if you're with us or against us. Well, oh, let's have a conversation about it. But no, nobody's willing to have any nuanced conversation because that would completely destroy their narrative, right? It would completely destroy it entirely if there was actually any nuance brought to the conversation, which is why people like myself we're like a third rail. Like, don't bring this person on to talk to anyone of any importance or significance, or they might have any reach. Yeah, let him play in his little sandbox there with the few dozen or at most few hundred people, right? But yeah, we don't want him getting out there his discourse or his thoughts or ideas getting out there. We're the sheeple might see it, right? Because it might arouse their intellect in some way where they actually might start thinking critically about things. Oh, the humanity. Can't have that. What's going on, Michael Griffin? Thank you for joining the stream as well, my friend. What ticks me off is the willful ignorance everywhere. The people don't want to hear the truth. It scares the crap out of them. Yeah, right? Just like that's the thing. But if you walked up to people, right? This is the crazy, insane part, right? If you walked up to people and you asked them, would you rather constantly be fed a bunch of lies and be ignorant to truth and reality? Or do you believe that truth is very important and something that you should be able to hear, right? Well, people would say, hey, truth is very important to tell the truth until you start telling them the truth, right? Then they're like, oh, never mind, don't want to hear it. If it goes against my ideology, if it makes me uncomfortable in any way, and maybe I have to recollect and start thinking through some of the thought processes that were jammed in my head very early on in my life. Oh, I don't want to go through that. So nope, no. Never mind. Truth bad. just keep soothing me with these lies and rhetoric, right? And it is a sad reality. Sad. Anyways, so let me get back here because, like I say, there's lots. So let's just talk about the whole climate change and forest fires. I mean, deja vu, anybody? Deja vu? Once again, even a bunch of us used to say, even during COVID, well, wait till this is over. Trust me. Climate change, and we haven't gotten into climate lockdowns as of yet. No, I'm not saying 100% whether they're going to come or not. I don't have a crystal ball or anything, but you can kind of see the writing on the wall, or at least it kind of seems that it may very well lean that way. Because what are we at now? Now, climate change is causing everything, not just every weather event, right? But even what? Oh, you got ticks now or doing something? Oh, that's climate change, right? Whatever. I mean, I'm not even going to try to remember. Usually I try to put that stuff out of my head shortly after I read it. But I mean, there's just been everything now. Everything this social media just blame it on climate change. And I mean, what a word to use, like rather than global warming and all that stuff. Climate change. Well, of course the climate changes, right? But what is the answer? Oh, just bow to the whims of government edicts and they'll save you. Oh, when the hell has that ever happened? And once again, if you're foolish enough to go along with the climate change narrative these days, after 3 years of the bullshit COVID narrative, and you're still willing to fall for the kind of fucking bullshit rhetoric that these top-down central planning elitists, these authoritarians, are trying to espouse with straight faces, all that, right? Good actors they can be. Definitely good actors. That's definitely something that they have all in common is they're really well adapted at lying straight in your face, right? While seeming like they're actually almost telling the truth, right? Good bullshitters, really good bullshitters. No wonder they make good politicians, right? But I mean, like I say, if you're willing to fall for this now and go along with this stuff, that yeah, like why, like, even with these fires, we know that arsonists, we know that people have set a lot of these fires, but the narrative is no. Just like we know that the vaccines don't stop or prevent transmission. Well, no, don't say anything like that. No, let's manipulate the language to the point where people won't even believe that. They just have to go along with what we say. And this is the other thing. Even if we all agree that climate change is real, well, what's the solution? Well, markets, right? Even some stupid, what was it, a government report that actually came down and said, in terms of, and they had to admit, basically, right? In terms of grocery and prices, well, what's the best thing? Competition, right? Yeah, competition, the market of ideas, right? That's well, of course, but of course, their answer is you need competition, but then how do you get more competition? Oh, no. Don't allow freedom to happen. Don't allow the freedom to happen, freedom of ideas to flourish in the marketplace. No. Government is how you fix that, right? Just like with the climate change. No, don't allow the free market of ideas and innovation and creativity and entrepreneurship solve these problems or these issues. No. It's got to be a top-down authoritarian government approach. That's the only answer. That's the one size fits all. And once again, if you're an environmentalist, which probably not a whole lot of you watch this stuff, my videos, although I don't understand why, I'm definitely not anti-environment. I definitely love the environment. I definitely don't want to die in 12 years like Greta has warned or anything. I mean, none of us want that, right? Especially if you have people like me who have kids and who want to have my kids have grandkids and all that stuff, who have skin in the game for the future, right? I care just as much about the environment as the next one. But I also recognize that the solution is not going to come from government. If you actually want a solution, it's not going to come from a top-down, authoritarian approach from governments and central planners who, once again, they'll finger wag at you to do the right thing while they're doing the precisely exact opposite and benefit themselves and their crony friends tremendously at your expense while doing so. Once again, even if you're environmentalist, really though, are you really, really that naive and foolish that you're going to fall for this new narrative? I don't know. Well, if you do, I mean, some people just can't be helped, right? Anyways, let me just bring this up real quick while we're on the topic. This is from the Counter Signal. Keen Bexty, I believe, is the one who started this alternative news organization. He looks like he's got a few other contributors there. Anyway, so this one, headline for this particular article is arson carnage worsened by climate change, Gerald Butt says. Is Trudeau's longtime pal Gerald Butts really blaming climate change for fires started by arsonists? Good question. This is by Mike Campbell, June 6, 2023. Speaking of Gerald Butts, was it him? And it's weird. I get on Twitter. Like I said, I've not been on social media much all week. Very, very busy. This is a very busy time of the year for me. But I did see Gerald Butts and Rachel Gilmore for some reason. I don't know why I still keep seeing their tweets because I don't typically retweet them because I try not to give them any more attention. Don't feed the trolls, more or less, right? But anyways, but both of them were more or less responding in response to Elon Musk limiting the amount of tweets that you can see as you scroll through your feed, right? Now, I kind of, in a way, I get what Elon Musk is doing, and some of it might make sense, but it's just, to me, it's like, can you just take your hands off the control, man? You guys have Section 230. Just take your hands off control, let the market work. Just prevent everyone from manipulating, give us transparency, right? Don't allow these algorithms to manipulate things. Just let the market work so that we can at least see what the hell is going to take place. The more they gerrymander or rig these things or manipulate them, it's like, well, do we know what is anything based or grounded on reality anymore? That is one complaint I definitely have. But once again, so he limited to, I think it started out, was it 600, then 800, then 1,000. If you're unverified, if you're verified like myself, you pay that $8 a month. You can do, it was at 6,000, then bumped up to 8,000 and 10,000. So 10 times more things you can scroll through on your feed before I guess you get, I guess you can't scroll anymore. You're basically locked to the point where, okay, you've scrolled through enough in the day. And I kind of get the intention why he's doing it. But once again, just take the hands off the wheel or the controls there, Elon. You know what I mean? Put it in autopilot, right? Whatever. But anyways, basically he's like, yeah, get off the internet and go spend time with your family. Great message as far as I'm concerned. I definitely wouldn't even disagree with that. But I mean, so they were saying, like, I think Rachel Gilmore's tweet was more or less just scrolling through my feed real fast so I can reach my limit so I can get off this hellscape or hell site or whatever she calls it. Well, you do realize that you and Gerald Butts kind of a similar complaint kind of thing. It's like, well, you do realize that you can just go away from Twitter, right? Nobody's forcing you to use Twitter or to scroll to your limit. What a weird, but this is the thing. People on the left, right? Although I would say it's not just left, but people who like to identify in the left, the identity politics people, right? The left-right people. I just play their game. That's the game they want to play. Well, here's the game you're playing. Really stupid game, but anyways. So you folks, it's like you're making yourself and your ilk, your kind, seem like you have no concept of personal responsibility or accountability. It's like just you don't have to keep scrolling until you're like, oh, I can't scroll anymore because Elon prevented me. Well, if you didn't want to scroll that far, just go away now. Go spend some time. But that's the thing. Do these people really? That's got to me thinking. Do they really even have anyone in their life that would actually even want to sit down and have a conversation with them? Because I mean, as we know, it seems like they spend most of their time is just regurgitating ideological talking points and praying at the altar of government. I can't imagine, right? And the kind of people that would want to sit down and pray to their God, aka government, with them, probably, like I say, not the greatest people on the planet, like them, share some really terrible, bad characteristic traits. So of course they're like, oh man. So Well, at least on Twitter, even though there's some of those right wingers or those independents, like, well, at least I could get away from just being in my. I'm sure they get sick of their own echo chamber. I mean, come on, how could you not? Right? How could you not? So, like I say, they're going through their own psychological issues. Well, hey, play stupid games, win stupid prizes. But anyway, so let's just kind of talk about this arson stuff here for a little bit. Let me read a little bit from this article. Trudeau's former advisor and longtime pal Gerald Butts is blaming climate change for the forest fires that were started by arsonists across Canada. Butts, along with several liberal MPs, regularly connects the forest fires in Canada to man-made climate change. One Twitter user called Butts to comment on the fact, or asked Butts to comment on the fact that a man in Alberta was arrested last month for intentionally starting at least 10 fires around Cold Lake. Butts responded by calling the user a climate denier. The fires are worse because of the conditions in the forest, Butts said. The conditions are caused by climate change, so just disregard them. Right? With Canada facing a huge uptick in forest fires compared to what's usual for this time of the year, many are skeptical of Butts' claim that all forest fires, even those intentionally or accidentally set by humans, are the result of climate change. RCMP in Nova Scotia noted that at least 3 recent fires were intentionally set, and the province increased the fine for violating its burn ban to $25,000. On top of the arrest by Alberta RCMP last month for 10 arson cases in 2021, a different woman was charged with 32 counts of arson in central and northern Alberta. Police charged Audrey Elaine Dunham after an in-depth investigation into a series of suspicious wildfires in the Bonneville and the beach areas. And last week, a 28-year-old homeless woman was arrested in British Columbia for starting a string of wildfires. Windy.com shows that Canada is currently dealing with way more intense forest fires than the U.S. So anyways, that there, once again, is some pushback against the climate change narrative, and really important. And actually, I will just say, and I'll share this in the link of the description too. This is an opinion piece from the Globe Mail called "You Can Kiss Your Pension and the Economy Goodbye Unless We Fix Climate Change." So fear, right? Yeah. Yep. If you don't fix climate change, and how in the hell do they intend to do that? Once again, like I say, because none of this stuff, none of the solutions that they have on offer are going to do anything or get even remotely resembling the end goal that they tout is what's going to happen or take place. Not going to happen. I'll be around to say, see, told you so, right? But I mean, fear. That's the message. That's the message is you must be fearful because, well, hey, fear is how they control you. And Canadians are very much susceptible this day, right? Of that, those fear-driven narratives playing an outsized role and completely distorting the way they think about things. Let me bring this one up. I found this to be pretty wild. What does it mean to be Canadian in 2023? Well, listen to this hot mic moment. Teacher tells Muslim students skipping LGBTQ events is not Canadian. Right? So this was published June 6, 2023. Watch below as an audio recording has surfaced of an Edmonton area teacher telling Muslim students that skipping LGBTQ events is not Canadian.
Some pride activities going on at school. Well, I'll tell you, you are out to lunch. If you think it's acceptable to not show up because you think that there's some pride activities going on at school, right? Oh, that's fine. You know, because I'm going to show my opinion by hanging out at the mall. But meanwhile, all of those kids who are, you know, involved in, say, the Gay Street Alliance or whatever, I don't even know if we have that anymore in our school, they're here when we did Ramadan for Lion Time, and they're showing respect in the class for your religion, right, for your beliefs. It goes 2 ways. If you want to be respected for who you are, if you don't want to suffer prejudice for your religion, your color of skin, your whatever, then you better give it back to people who are different from you. That's how it works. It's an exchange. And it isn't like that in all countries. As I told you, in Uganda, literally, if they think you're gay, they will execute you. If you believe that kind of thing, then you don't belong here. because that is not what Canada believes. We believe in.
Right? So here you got this woman, this irate woman, lambasting this, I would assume, this Muslim student that, yeah, bake that fucking cake or else, right? Right? Now you have to go and not just support, but praise, applaud, perhaps, hey, even if you would kneel, right? This is this is just this is just insane line of reasoning. Listen, people can do what they choose to do. The LGBT, as a libertarian, the LGBT, the alphabet people, you do you, right? What kind of sexual act? Because that's the other thing too. When we were talking about LGBTQ, just have a conversation about any of those letters of the alphabet and ask yourself, well, what is it really? What is a lesbian, right? Is a lesbian? What distinguishes a lesbian from a heterosexual woman? Would be the kind of person that they prefer to have sexual relationships with. Because if it's people that they just want to, whether they cohabitate with, spend large amounts of time with, right? Go to the movies with, have long walks or conversation. I mean, that could be just a friend, a companion, right? And there's already a category for all that, right? You can cohabitate with other people and you don't need any acronyms. You're just two individuals, right? Sharing common space or spending large amounts of time together. Why is the word lesbian, like gay, right? Bi. What all? It's because of their sexual preference, what they prefer to do sexually. That's the other thing, especially when you're talking about gender stuff. How the hell does the tranny thing? I can see where you can get into where it's like, okay, you're starting to get into some of this. Let's talk about perhaps gender here, but for the LGB, right? Or still got to learn about the Qs, I guess, right? But anyways, the LGBTs. Why are they all tied in together with the T's anyways? What the hell do they even have in common? And once again, why do you think a Muslim that their faith, Islam, or even maybe their personal beliefs don't necessarily align? Well, as long as this person isn't doing anything to inflict harm to people in the LGBTQ in the alphabet community, that should be a good thing. That's amazing, right? That you can live in a country where people can have these variances and these differences, and people be like, okay, I don't like it. I don't necessarily support it. But you do you, I do me, right? That makes for a peaceful society. And that would be a kind of Canada that, once again, would be something in terms of the idea to be proud of. But the minute you're like, well, you got to do it or else, or get the hell out of this country, more or less, like she said, right? Then you don't belong here. Well, is that the kind of country you live in? Doesn't sound like this unified, peace, loving, happy, prosperous, and flourishing society, does it? No, it sounds very stifling. Sounds very top down. Sounds very not anything that I would want to have anything to do with. That's for sure. Anyways, like I say, is that what it means to be Canadian in 2023? Identity politics, dominating discourse, forcing people and compelling people, bullying them, intimidating them to accept my lifestyle or else, right? Oh, how unifying, right? Doesn't sound like a winning recipe as far as I'm concerned. Boy, I think I might have to turn the fan on here. It's getting a little warm, getting a little hot on their collar. Let's try here. Here's another one. Let's see. Is this what it means to be Canadian in 2023? Let's try this one. Surely we'll find it. We'll find the answer to the question. It's here somewhere. The established media, they figured it. Not. So what about this one? This is out of the Toronto Sun. The Privy Council advocated downplaying COVID vaccine injuries or deaths. The Privy Council memo was obtained under Access to Information. It's by Post Media, June 6, 2023. A secret Privy Council office memo. Let me throw on the old glasses for a sec here, folks, while I read this. Secret Privy Council office memo recommended that any COVID vaccine related injuries or deaths be carefully managed with winning communication strategies as to not shake public confidence, according to Blacklock's reporter. The May 2021 memo released through Access to Information legislation came 5 months after the Department of Health licensed the first Pfizer BioNTech pandemic vaccine. Events related to a COVID-19 vaccine may be minor or severe, said the memo, called testing behaviorally informed messaging in response to severe adverse events following immunization. Right. News reports of adverse events following immunization and the government's response to them have strong potential to influence public confidence in vaccines and their safety. This is in quote, by the way. The memo also suggested skewing stats to minimize the impact of vaccine-related deaths or injuries, such as stating the chance of it happening to me is 1 in a million, rather than it has happened to 5 people or it has happened 5 times. So yeah, depending on how you phrase that, right, changes how people will think about it. The Public Health Agency said of the 97.6 million vaccine doses administered at the time of the report, there were 20,428 serious adverse event reports. So once again, this, after all that we've learned, and this is just more information that's come to light. So basically, the Privy Council, right, advocated for downplaying like serious injuries or deaths. I mean, that to me is that what it means to be Canadian in 2023? Is just lying, manipulating, distorting facts and reality? For what? For what? To be able to force your preferences onto others. Is that what it means to be Canadian in 2023? Because if it does, I got to tell you, folks, not loving it. Not loving it at all. Let's bring this one up real quick, too. I'm just going to bring one more up, and then I'll get back into checking you folks here on the stream. Yeah, here we go. So this was this was reported on June 6th. This is from Rebel News. Shout out to Rebel News. Actually, shout out to anyone that's in the media that's challenging the status quo these days. I might not agree with everything you folks say, but I'm just really happy that you're out there at least doing your due diligence and challenging the status quo. So this headline, Ottawa released a fake security bulletin against Freedom Convoy. It refuses to disclose source. Deputy Prime Minister Chrystia Freeland asked government bureaucrats to find evidence linking the convoy to acts of terrorism. They found no evidence. So this is reported by Alex Dhaliwal, June 6, 2023. According to Blacklock's reporter, once again, shout out to Blacklock's reporter because I got to tell you, they're basically at the top in Canada in terms of really challenging the status quo and the establishment and digging into the information and putting in that kind of work or effort. Anyways, yeah, let me put the glasses down here. According to Blacklock's reporter, Public Safety Canada falsified a security bulletin claiming the Freedom Convoy ransacked federal office buildings last year in Ottawa. On June 5th, the Office of Public Safety Minister Marco Mendicino said they did not direct the Government Operations Center to issue the fake bulletin last January 28th. The Operations Center responsible did not respond to a request for comment. We have received confirmation that protesters have started to enter office buildings in the Ottawa downtown core and are allegedly causing damage, said the bulletin. As a result, Minto Place is going into weekend lockdown mode. All entrance doors will be locked effective immediately. However, an access to information request proved that assertion is incorrect as no such incident involving protesters occurred. The Public Safety Department did not reveal the source of the disinformation. Still, a senior public safety staffer admitted the feds played fast and loose with the Freedom Convoy. Last February 25th, Mendicino told MPs he advised reporters to be very careful in dealing with convoy participants. It ultimately furthered the government's disinformation campaign against protesters. The Canadian Parliamentary Press Gallery called the demonstration unsafe in a February 1st, 2022 letter. It provided no evidence to substantiate the claims, reported Blacklock's reporter. Protesters of the truck convoy have harassed some of our members in the last few days, and we cannot afford to be left exposed without protection for hours outside the building, wrote Catherine Levesque of the National Post, then press gallery president. No Freedom Convoy participant ever faced charges for misconduct against reporters. In the Public Order Emergency Commission, Canadians learned that department staff sought to discredit protesters as violent, even without concrete evidence. Some of their more extreme comments, i.e., calling for a January 6th style insurrection, are getting more coverage in the media, wrote staff in a January 24th, 2022 text. There could be an opportunity to get in on this growing narrative of the truckers. There's a danger that if we come down too hard, they might push. There's a danger that if we come down too hard, they might push out the crazies, wrote an aide. That's fair, replied another. Deputy Prime Minister Chrystia Freeland also asked government bureaucrats to find evidence linking the convoy to acts of terrorism. Still, they found no evidence, as no entities on the National Terrorist Watch List orchestrated the week-long demonstration in Ottawa last February. According to communication between the Financial Transaction Reports Analysis Center of Canada, FinTrack staff, the RCMP and Public Safety Canada, Freeland's office contacted Trudeau's National Security and Intelligence Advisor, NSIA, Jody Thomas, for reasons to seize the bank accounts of convoy participants and supporters. FinTrack is Canada's financial intelligence unit that uncovers terrorism financing and money laundering. Apologies for a late evening email, but finance reaches out to the NSIA, who reached over to my DM, Deputy Minister, regarding the following question: exploring all avenues to address the convoy in terms of financial restrictions, and wondering whether there is any information or indication of listed entities in Canada or abroad engaged in the finances of the convoys. We ask this question every day at ADM INS ops calls, and so far the answer has been there is no evidence to suggest listed entities are directly financing protests, replied Thomas. A January 26, 2022 document corroborated those internal communications, describing the multi-million-dollar fundraising effort of the convoy as unlikely to fund terrorism. All ideological motivated violent extremist attacks in Canada have been low cost and low in sophistication, wrote FinTrack managers. The potential for funds being used for violent activity seems unlikely at this time, considering ideologically motivated violent extremist crowdfunding is usually not used towards conducting a violent activity, they wrote. The Public Order Emergency Commission determined Ottawa's invocation of the Emergency Act to seize convoy participants' assets and bank accounts to bring about its end was appropriate. The convoy entered Ottawa last January 28 and disembarked on February 14. Under the Emergency Act, law enforcement was legally able to establish exclusion zones around the convoy. It could kick people out without identifying them as protesters. It also permitted banks to freeze the bank accounts of convoy participants and supporters. Records show Freeland distributed a restricted blacklist to foreign banks of 201 trucking companies sympathetic to the convoy, intending to temporarily seize their finance to end the convoy protests. According to an inquiry of ministers tabled in the House of Commons, banks froze $7.8 million belonging to suspected convoy supporters across 267 bank and credit union accounts and 170 Bitcoin wallets. Information was shared only within entities listed according to the Emergency Economic Measures Order, wrote the RCMP in the inquiry. They confirmed no information was shared with non-governmental entities other than the banks listed. The Department of Finance, in its submission last February 3rd to the Special Joint Committee on the Declaration of Emergency, said the federal government never verified the blacklist. A reporter asked Freeland on February 17th whether freezing bank accounts was appropriate for the government to take. She called the financial measurements a powerful tool to disincentivize protest and shrink the size of the convoy. You hear this stuff, folks. Just think about this, right? Using government force, the heaviest of hands of government in terms of the invoking the Emergency Act to disincentivize protests, right? POEC Commissioner Paul Rouleau said online threats against officials, the risk of violence from lone wolf actors concerning memes from Diagolon and weapons at the court's blockade with supposed Diagolon paraphernalia constituted threats to national security, which once again, folks, we all know that this was all basically a joke, and the Diagolon thing was actually done as a means to show just how insane the establishment are and putting forth narratives, any kind of fear-driven narrative to pit Canadians against other Canadians or to make sure that nobody stands up for the freedoms, right? That was the overarching goal. There's a substantial mass of lemmings in the West right now that will believe anything they are told to do, anything they are bidded to do by their government. Well, ain't that the truth? Yeah, that's true. That is so true. Hey, Zeus Gonzalez, thank you for joining the stream, man. To be Canadian means being called a racist, homophobic, terrorist, etc. by your prime minister. Well, you're not wrong there. Thanks for joining the stream. You're not wrong there. I hear they are working themselves up to ban the burning firewood soon. What with the arson fires burning merrily. Yeah. Well, I got to tell you, folks, wood heat is actually my sole source of heat in these very, very cold New Brunswick winter months. And yeah, literally, I guess, over my and my family's dead body, right? I will be heating my home and keeping myself warm in spite of these authoritarians and any attempt that they may try to prevent me from doing so. I saw the local news this morning. It looks like all of southern Canada has separate fires going on. How can that be a coincidence? Well, there you go. There you go. How can it all be a coincidence, right? Once again, in the absence of having the knowledge needed or necessary to give you a clear and concise answer on that, I'll just say, I don't know. But your suspicions are very much warranted, and you're not alone. Oh, okay. Remember 20 years ago when children had nightmares and emptied their piggy banks for that asshole, the asshole that espoused all his climate lies with his charts and propaganda? Remember 20 years ago when children had nightmares? I'm not quite sure what you referenced there, but I'm sure it may come to me. Atmospheric CO2 concentration is now near lowest in geological history since the Cambrian, close to the photosynthetic threshold. Well, thanks for that information, Line in the Sand. But once again, to me, it really doesn't even come down to whether there is climate change happening or not. What it comes down to is what are the solutions, right? Market ideas, you know, entrepreneurs, innovation, the creativity, the ingenuity of the individual human mind to solve problems, right? But no. What's the ideal way to fight this or combat climate change from the central planning elites? Oh, yeah, just allow us to steal more and more of your money, micromanage and dictate and control everything you say or everything you can do, right? Or what kind of lifestyle you can lead, and that'll fix it. That'll which once again, I mean, if you're foolish or naive enough to believe them, then once again, I don't know. There's not much hope for you, right? Although I highly suspect there's none of the people like that in this live stream. Yeah, people keep eating their BS, so the government and media feed them more. It's so true, right? So true. With HARP technology, it's possible man-made weather crisis for more control. Well, that's the other thing too. There. I mean, come on. There are lots of things, that could be contributing factors, but we're not hearing the whole point, anyways. As far as I'm concerned, is are you hearing any nuanced conversations from anyone in the establishment? Are they anyone in the establishment media, right? Bringing on people who, even the people that they claim to be climate deniers, or even people that just maybe have different perspectives, right? Are they sitting down having long form conversations like those of us in the alternative media? We live and let live libertarian types? Nope. But once again, that's the only place you're seeing these kind of nuanced conversations taking place is in the alternative media space and sphere, right? Of influence, where there are people like us who are challenging the status quo. But if you're just paying attention to the establishment media or these establishment politicians, you're not getting any of that, right? So I guess those people don't believe that there are, possible external solutions other than top-down micromanagement and government control. Why? Because they're not given or they're not privy to that kind of information. That's a big old fail on government's behalf because the people that they're keeping ignorant and ill-informed could very well be a few of them that have the ideas and the solutions to get us out from whatever issue you think is so profound these days. But no, once again, government, central planners, and authoritarians, they bite off their own nose to spite their face, right? Not so wildfire. Yeah, good point, Stuart. Good point. I know climate deniers is hilarious. I know. Yeah, I deny that there's such thing as climate, right? It really is. It's just so crazy. It's like a progressive conservative. It's like, wait a minute, that sounds very much like an oxymoron. Right? Like, what the hell? Yeah, denier is such a scary gaslighting tactic. No, no, please don't call me a denier. What will people think? Yeah, and that's all it is. Just like with COVID, the unvaccinated, right? Anti-vax, right? Denier, anti-vax. They just use these derogatory, insulting words and terms, and that's all it's for, so that everyone will just say, "Oh yeah, I won't listen to Bennett or anyone." But I think more and more people are waking up and realize that, oh, that's the game you're playing, right? Or at least I sure hope so. It does seem that way, though. Nancy Churchill, thank you for joining the stream. Really appreciate that. Good to see you broadcast. Well, thank you, Nancy, and thank you for joining the stream. I hope you're having a great long weekend. And like I say, feel free to share this with anyone else if you think others might be beneficial in seeing this live stream. Muslims not buying that. Good on them. Exactly. Yeah. Exactly. Well, that's the other thing too. I mean, to pretend that all people are just, just one descripting factor, and that's what defines us all as individuals. Like, it's just such slow brow thinking, right? Why is this radical politics in our schools? And what does Canada believes even mean? We are 40 millions of people with different opinions. We are not the board. Exactly. But that's actually kind of my point exactly. So thanks for pointing that out, Gato. Is yes, exactly. Right. And this is the problem. So if people still, right, want to have this thing called Canada, this country called Canada, okay, well, here's what it is. The only way that can work, folks, is you can keep calling this particular massive geography, right? In this particular, the northern hemisphere of North America, right? You can keep calling it Canada all you want, but the only way that will ever be able to continue on, right, is if that idea or ideal has to come with some baseline principles, some first principles, some foundational values or ideals, right? There has to be some ethics, some universally consistent ethics brought into play, just like in a household, right? If I want a lot of people to be able to live under my roof together, I always have to recognize that we're always going to have differences and various opinions and preferences and things like that. But how could I make that work? How could I make it so that I could get a whole bunch of people with a lot of different perspectives and opinions and lifestyles and how they want to, do their thing, right? Well, how could I make that work so that it would be peaceful and prosperous and we would at least get along as best as we can? Well, you set some very finite rules, establishment, so they recognize and acknowledge that we're all sovereign individuals and respect us for that fact that we were sovereign individuals and allow us to do our thing without being able to force or impose ourselves on each other. That's the only way it would work. Because the minute you introduce this concept of, okay, we're all going to live in this big house, this hunter house, let's call it, and you can all have all these crazy ideologies, and there's no core identity or ideals or ideas. It's just government, and we all recognize that government is force. Government is that big, gigantic gun in the room. So you're going to have this big, gigantic gun in the room, and you're just going to say, okay, we're all in the hunter house, and we're just going to do it democratically. So whoever, has the largest gang or whoever has the largest amount of people, that can overwhelm forcefully their opponents and take up possession of that gun and use it to, impose their ideas on everyone else that's in the house, well, like that might be a good idea if you're the one that has the bigger gang, but if you're the ones that are susceptible to being, on the losing end of that particular equation, well, you're not so happy about that, right? No, the only way, like I say, the only way that you can have like this big country, or even in a small setting like my household, where we all at least could try to get along as best we can, is very limited, finite amount of rules that are universally consistent and uphold ethics and principles, right? So you do you and I do me, and as long as you're not forcing your shit on me and I'm not forcing my shit on you, we'll be able to figure this stuff out. The minute though you play identity politics, create all these factions, warring factions, promote them and tout them as such, and keep using derogatory terms towards the people that identify in a group that you don't align with, right? Well, then you're just, like I say, that's just a perfect example or setup to have nothing but non-stop conflict and people vying to try to assume control of that big, gigantic gun in the room to use against everyone else. And that's basically the kind of country we live in today. How's that working out? Not so well, unless, you're the one that currently, like if you're the Trudeau liberals or the supporters and you now have possession and full control of that gun with the help of the NDP, I'll add, then yeah, you're probably thinking this is great. But what about all the people who are suffering all the edicts and impositions that are being thrust upon them by the sheer factor that they have access to that thing? Not so good for them, right? So what does it mean to be Canadian? To be able to forcefully impose your will based on identity politics, based on what's between your legs or the color of your skin? Is that what it means to be Canadian? Because I got to tell you, sounds like a recipe for disaster, and it looks like it too. But yeah, great for pointing that out, Gato. Well said, man. Well said. It sure seems that way, Stuart. I could not disagree with you. I really couldn't. I really couldn't. Although I wouldn't say communist per se. The feminine mindset, they prefer it to be like if you listen to women, they would think more communist or socialist. And I'm sure that's the kind of ideal they would prefer, right? That kind of authoritarian collectivism. But I got to tell you, based on how things are actually done, it seems more fascistic, right? More crony corporate, because like there is no, like, the government hasn't assumed control, right, over the means of the production, which would typically be your communist type of thing, right? No, they just the corporations, like the fascist model, right? No, they keep the CEOs, right, right, in these positions in these corporations, but they're just controlled by way of regulation. So it's kind of an arm's length way of controlling the economy, the fascistic way. The third way, but at this point, I wouldn't even say it's full on just fascistic. It's take a little bit of, it's a mixed match of a little bit of socialism, communism, fascism, national socialism, all different forms of authoritarian collectivism that has been tried in the past, and they're just trying to tinker around the edges, and that's really what it is. So I don't know, whatever name you want to describe it, right? I'm sure we should come up with someone at some point in time, right? But yeah, like I say, whether you want to call it communism or socialism or fascism, it's just government, corporations, and the media all combining forces, right? And these are really all acts of government when you're talking about in terms of giving these people these institutional powers, because a corporation is just a legal fiction, right? In the absence of government legislation dictating that corporations can socialize losses while privatizing gains, like that's nothing. There's nothing capitalist about that. That's for sure, right? So I get what you're saying, but it actually, that's one thing would be really prudent for those of us in the liberty movement and people who care about freedoms, is to figure what is the name, what kind of a phrase, what kind of term can we use to describe this modern form of authoritarian collectivism, right? Maybe 1% of people want private industry health. Yeah, that's true. Well, I'm not sure on the percentage, but yes, it does seem, well, it's the thing. People are, incentivized to take advantage of benefit at other people's expense. And in that kind of scenario, it's really hard to get people to be so principled, like, no, I'll keep losing, right? Because that's the thing. If you take the principled stance, as many of us do, you're basically saying, I'm willing to be on the losing side of every equation so that I can stand on principle. I might do it sometimes, right? You might do it sometimes, right? But yeah, you got to acknowledge that most people aren't going to shoot themselves in the foot quite that readily. And that's the problem. That's the issue we all find ourselves in. Yeah, they cry fashion. Exactly. Exactly. Yeah. Yes. So you heard about that too. Yeah. Apparently the C disease was so dangerous that a third of the vaxes were placebo. So yes, I heard that reported as well. And that's quite something to think about. Who, like people that have got the vaccines, say, hey, I got the vaccines and I'm fine, man. Well, are you sure you got the vaccines? Maybe you got a placebo. I don't know. But it's something you might want to think about. You might want to ponder, right? Yeah, heart attacks and death doesn't sound safe, but maybe effective if you're into eugenics. Yeah, good one, David. Good one. Anyways, I'm going to get back into some more here. Check this stuff out. Like I say, just is this Canadian? Let me see. Is this Canadian? It seems like if it is, well, once again, not going to work out so good for cohesion or unity in this country, right? This out of CTV News. Canada should consider legal solution to fight residential school denialism. Report. So this is a copy and paste of a Canadian Press article by Stephanie Taylor, I guess, here. This was updated June 16th, and published on that date as well. Ottawa, Canada should give urgent consideration to legal mechanisms as a way to combat residential school denialism, says a new report from the Independent Special Interlocutor on unmarked graves. Justice Minister David Lametti said he is open to such a solution. Kimberly Murray made the call in an interim report released Friday, just over a year after she was appointed to an advisory role focused on how Ottawa can help Indigenous communities search for children who died and disappeared from residential schools. The former executive director of the Truth and Reconciliation Commission of Canada spent much of the past year traveling the country and hearing from different communities, experts, and survivors. The Liberal government created her role as it looked for ways to respond to First Nations from across Western Canada and in parts of Ontario using ground penetrating radar to search former residential school sites for possible unmarked graves. In her interim report, Murray raised concerns about increasing attacks from denialists who challenge communities when they announce the discovery of possible unmarked graves. This violence is prolific, the report said, and takes place via email, telephone, social media, op-eds, and at times through in-person confrontations. Okay, first of all, violence has a defined meaning, not just in your regular dictionaries, but even in the legal dictionary. What was it, the Black's Law or whatever the hell? But in terms of legal terms, right? Violence is using physical force, right, against another person in some way, or it has to be physical in nature. And if you're talking about something in terms of emails or telephone or on social media, well, there is no such thing as violence that can take place. Now, there might be a solicitation of violence, such as, are people threatening where there's a direct threat of real imminent harm and has been proven so in a court of law, because that's the other thing. Everyone is innocent until proven guilty, right? So if there are people that are breaking a criminal law because using violence against another human being in Canada is a criminal offense. So if that's taking place, well, it's just a simple matter of, well, show me the police reports, right? Or just call the police and stop trying to collectivize the fact that people that you disagree with are saying words that you disagree with, and you're in turn trying to call them violent as a consequence of result. Sounds like you're the one that's doing the escalating, right? Sounds like you, and especially if you want to bring government, which is a monopoly of violence, which sounds like if you're advocating for government to step in here, means you're the one that's advocating for violence. Okay, where are we at here? Murray listed several examples, including after the May 2021 announcement by the Tickamloops to Shippawepkick Nation, whatever, that ground penetrating radar has discovered what are believed to be 215 unmarked graves at the site of the former Kamloops Indian residential school. The findings garnered international media attention and triggered an outpouring of grief, shock, and anger from across the country, both in Indigenous and non-Indigenous communities. Several examples. So I'm trying to find the examples of these Canadians who were using violence, right? I'm not seeing that yet. Murray said in a report that on top of dealing with an onslaught of media attention, the First Nation in British Columbia had to deal with individuals entering the site itself. Some came in the middle of the night carrying shovels. They said they wanted to see for themselves if children are buried there. Denialists also attacked the community on social media. So once again, I'm still not hearing any examples of violence being used. So do these people not understand what violence is? Because, in Canada, I think it'd be really important that at the very least, we all 40 million of us, at least, or at least those of us who are old enough to understand these things, right? What violence is. So then you're not confusing it with disagreements or people who are trying to get to the bottom of things, but not using violence. Because that to me sounds like something that Canadians could rally behind, that could unify us if you want to have such thing as a country called Canada, but not going to work when you're playing identity politics or suggesting people using their words or having disagreements with you are violent in any way. Whatever Roseanne Casimir of what it is said she no longer uses social media without heavy filters because of the intensity of the hate and racism she experienced, according to the report, and believes the issue needs more attention. Murray said Canada has a role to play to combat this sentiment and that urgent consideration should be given to what legal tools exist to address the problem, including both civil and criminal sanctions. So once again, these are people who so far have not used any violence whatsoever, right? But these First Nations people, these activists are saying, even though no actual violence has taken place by people who just tend to disagree with me, I want to seek to use government, the monopoly of force of violence, the entity that has the capacity for the most violence in any country, right? If you doubt that in the 20th century, just Google it. Right. But anyways, they're suggesting that you should use criminal sanctions. So the violence of the law, the violence of the state, right? What? Locking people in cages, plundering them, or economically enslaving them for certain periods of time until they've paid off their penance, right? Or, I don't know, whatever excuse you want to use, but basically, or what? Maybe sending men with badges, guns, batons, pepper spray. You want people armed, locked and loaded for violence to go against people who aren't using violence at all. That sounds like a whole lot of escalation to me for people who are supposedly, sounds like they're against hate and violence. Sounds like these First Nation people are vehemently opposed to violence and hate, or at least based on the rhetoric that I'm reading, they should be. And yet, what's the answer? What's their solution? Well, violence, and look like backed up by a whole lot of hatred, right? They have the evidence, the photos of burials, the records that prove these kids died. It is on their shoulders, Murray told a crowd gathering Friday in Cowessess First Nation in Saskatchewan. The government of Canada and the churches must step up, Murray said. Lametti, who appointed Murray to a role and joined the event in Cowessess First Nation by video conference on Friday, said that he is open to all possibilities to fighting residential school denialism. So what you're allowed to think, once again, this is government saying, we should figure out some way to be able to control how a person thinks or what a person thinks. Yeah. Sounds like a whole lot of escalation there, doesn't it? Who are the truly evil ones with evil and violent intentions? He said that includes a legal solution and outlawing it, and that Canada can look at other countries that have criminalized Holocaust denial. So, you know, if you deny that, well, they could outlaw what you think. Yeah, yeah, right? Yeah. What you're allowed to think, they'll outlaw it. And how dare you? And if you dare to go against the law, well, we all know how that plays out, right? Cowessess First Nation announced in June 2021 that ground penetrating radar had identified 751 potential unmarked graves at a community cemetery near a former residential school. Murray's interim report also undermined the need for greater access to records, including the highly sensitive documents compiled to adjudicate compensation claims under the Indian Residential School Settlement Agreement. They are set to be destroyed by 2027, as decided by the Supreme Court of Canada. Well, you wouldn't want to have records just lying around. The records detail the abuses survivors suffered. Survivors are able to request copies of their own records or consent to them being sent to the National Center for Truth and Reconciliation. The archive designed to house documents from the residential school system. Murray's report said only 30 survivors had chosen to have their records preserved. She said their pending destruction is concerned because they could contain information relating to the deaths and burials of other children. Anyway, so once again, this will be placed in the link of the description as well. But so is that Canadian, right? If people disagree with you or deny some of the claims that so far have yet to be actually conclusively proven, that you use government, you use force, you use violence, you criminalize them, and you punish them severely if need be for daring to do so, right? Is that what it means to be Canadian in 2023? Well, yeah, putting a big damper on any national sentiment that I might have still had left residing inside of me, right? If that's what Canada is in 2023. Yeah, actually, I won't bring this one up because it's not necessarily pertaining to Canada, but I will just point out this Vox article is with the headline: Joe Rogan wants a debate on vaccine science. Don't give it to him. How to have better conversations about contentious scientific judgments. So, anyways, like I say, I'll just move on beyond that. But I just, like I say, at least people like Joe Rogan are getting the idea of having a debate out there about this stuff, right? Because you have people, like I say, who, whether they want to identify as left and right, it's like, okay, we'll sit down and have some words, have a conversation, have a debate, have a discussion. But once again, the message we keep getting from people, at least those who claim to be progressive, right, or on the left side of the political spectrum here, no, debate is wrong. You don't even stoop down to the level of debating other people's ideas. You just impose your will on others. So, like, once again, think about the kind of people who are going to line up behind that kind of idealism, right? Is no, we're not going to negotiate or conversate or figure out any nuance or if there's any gray area here. No, it's just my way or the highway. How's that going to work out for you, right? Probably not good for everyone. Probably going to create a lot of division, a lot of strife, a lot of anger, a lot of resentment. Doesn't sound like the kind of Canada that should be celebrated. Now, does it? And once again, this one I'll just scroll by this another, once again, in terms of the identity politics, which definitely rules the day. And of course, identity politics, it is literally all about not just fear, but divide and conquer. And it's working like a charm, folks, working like a charm. And people are allowing that to work so well. And it's quite disturbing to watch. Anyways, this is a Financial Post article. Mining Association launches regulations to diversify mostly male and white industry. Protocol hopes to attract more women and newcomers and minorities. So this was published June 22nd, 2023 by Naimul Karlin, Canada's largest mining association has announced new regulations that its members must follow to tackle issues such as sexual harassment, bullying, and gender discrimination at a time when the industry is finding it difficult to attract workers. Yeah, this sure as hell, like I say, it's almost as if everything that these central planning utopians are trying to do, these control freaks, right? These petty tyrants, it almost seems as if they're literally trying to destroy anything that even remotely resembles a cohesive country. Now, there's sometimes where I'll say, I can kind of understand, but once again, what do you think you end up with on the other side of that? And if you want to decentralize things, well, then let's start having conversations about it rather than, using devious or tactics that are meant to not just divide and conquer, but to basically elicit very bad responses, potentially violent responses. Why? It's almost like they're constantly stirring the pot in the hopes or anticipating that they'll be able to stoke the flames of the division to the point where what? You get civil conflict, the entire economy and society completely degrades and destroys itself or implodes. Is that what the left are trying to do? If I can't have it my way, then burn it all to the ground, right? Is that where they're at these days? Is that what it means to be Canadian in 2023? Hmm. Oh, and actually, yeah, I won't bring this one up either. Just trying to scroll through some of these kind of quick. This is a CBC article, exclusive. The source behind foreign interference leaks will be found and punished, PM security advisor says. John D. Thomas said security officials jeopardized intelligence secrets to leak information, gain notoriety. This was reported by Christian Pag Lang, June 22nd, 2023. So, yeah, no inquiry. They don't even seem to care about trying to figure out what's going on in terms of the Chinese election interference and meddling, right? And some of the things that CSIS has warned not just the politicians but the public about. But no, they're more predisposed, more concerned with going after the source of the leak. How dare you speak out about anything that the government says? Don't you know you're supposed to be sworn by secrecy, or have some NDA, right? No, you're supposed to be loyal to me and the political party, right? The gang, right? Not to the ideals or to your country, the ideals of your country. No, right? So once again, what does it mean to be Canadian in 2023? Oh, right. Here's a second opinion article from CBC. Why ERs are under intense pressure across Canada and how to help fix them. Staffing shortages, burnout, lack of funding push healthcare workers on to the edge. It's Adam Miller and Prept Bernania. It's posted June 24th, 2023. So once again, why are we all know why? Because it's a socialized, top-down, micromanaged, dictated, and controlled healthcare system that fails miserably, is not innovative, or has the capacity to change when is needed or necessary, or to adapt in any way. Why? Because once again, government, central planning, authoritarianism, that kind of stuff in terms of how it affects the economy. I mean, it's just so top down and cumbersome for the people or for anyone in it that everyone just feels overwhelmed. Once again, they keep looking to the solutions is okay, government has completely fucked this up. But what's the solution on offer? More government intervention, not just into the economy, but into all areas of our social or economic lives. Well, how's that worked out in the past? Not so well, but yet, once again, just same remedy, right? I guess when all your problems look like a nail, I guess all you gotta, it's always the answer, right? Or the solution is to have a big giant hammer. But we all know the way to fix the healthcare system is to allow market competition, to allow freedom to actually flourish. And that's the only thing that's going to help things, people, right? For the freedom of ideas and the marketplace of ideas to actually flourish. Without it, none of these other solutions, these top-down solutions or remedies, are ever going to actually prove to be as beneficial as they do. Matter of fact, they'll constantly prove to be the exact opposite and a detriment. And here's a good one. I'll bring this one right up. So it just goes to show the strip difference these days in terms of the ruling class and the peons in terms of our economic might and ability to affect change, right? So listen to this here. Where are we at here? So the public sector union, right? So PSAC strike helped keep Canada's economy flat in April, but May data shows signs of strength. Based on latest economic data, traders say there's a 50-50 chance of another rate hike in July. So this is reported CBC June 30th, 2023. So it's literally admitting like government workers and unions are so entitled and have so much more disposable income and ability to affect the economy to the point where it was the government union strike that helped keep Canada's economy flat, that tamped down some of that inflation. We peons, like even if you've been out there spending your money, buying things, getting things, caught up, prepping whatever you're doing, maybe fixing up your home, buying a new car, all that, whatever you're doing, basically what they're saying is has very minimal effect on the economy as a whole. But hey, if government unions, if the public sector decides to do something, well, they play an outstretched role and can have a massive effect on your economy to the point where even just a strike could change Canada's GDP and the central bank's policy decisions, right? So is that what Canada is? A two-tiered system where there is no private sector middle class. If you want to be middle class in Canada, you have to kiss the ring. You have to join the public sector. You have to be part of the ruling establishment. Is that what it means to be Canadian? No genuine private sector, just the haves and the have-nots. And the have-nots are anyone that functions outside of government. And the haves are all those who function within or benefit from government largesse or their ability to forcefully redistribute wealth and income. Sure seems like. Anyways, once again, this will be placed in the link in the description of this stream as well. And of course, at this point in time, it's probably a good idea to talk about a little bit more about. Actually, no, I kind of already covered that at the beginning, I guess. So, when will Canadian news disappear from Google, Facebook? What will Bill C-18 Rift mean for you? So, basically, I will just mention that it's going to take a while for not just C-11, but C-18 for all that to be implemented and to play out in the economy. So you might not recognize it right now. And that's another thing why even some of the people who are liberal supporters would be like, oh, listen to those far right, because everyone's far right these days, apparently, right? Look, they said that the government was going to how they're going to completely destroy the internet. Well, like I say, it's going to be months in the making before all this comes to fruition. So don't get too overzealous as of yet, liberal supporters, those who are proponents of the status quo or the establishment. Yeah, it will shake out eventually that people like myself be proven right. It's just going to take a little while. Just going to take a little while. But for sure, it's going to have a profound effect. But like I say, the beautiful thing, folks, and this is where that personal responsibility is going to really kick in, is there are going to be ways to circumvent and to avoid being this heavily suppressed in terms of getting access to information without having to financially support or prop up the establishment. And I will, and there will be others. So even if you don't watch my video, there will be plenty of others that will help you navigate and how you can do that. But at some point in time, when this all comes to fruition, I'll make sure that I have all the information at my fingertips and readily available to help explain to you, those of you who might need to hear that kind of stuff, in terms of how are we going to navigate on the internet where we can still get the kind of information we need to get out there without, once again, propping up or subsidizing the established media or basically having to go to them as the sole source for information. Trust me, there are definitely going to be workarounds. There are workarounds right now, and they will continue to be. Freedom is not going to be beaten down quite that easily or that readily, because once again, you got to keep in mind that these central planners, they have a lot of power at their disposal, but they're massively incompetent in comparison and contrast to those in the private sector who are fighting for the freedoms. Now, listen to this. This is a headline of the National Observer. Silicon mobsters chokehold on Canada. Actually, let me bring this up. Let's just read a little bit of this. Just for the shits and giggles, right? I mean, basically, isn't the National Observer basically a tabloid anyways? Pretty sure, right? So this is Sandy Garasino. It's an opinion piece submitted on June 30th, 2023. Here's just a little context to how thuggishly Meta, Facebook, and Google are conducting themselves in Canada. In response to new Canadian legislation designed to divert roughly $300 million a year into supporting journalism, both companies have announced bans on search and sharing of Canadian news on their sites. What the hell kind of people act this way? These are mob tactics. Nice little newspaper you got there. Be ashamed if something happened to it. Once again, so we all, I mean, if you're watching my content or anyone that's reading all this stuff on the internet, we're all familiar with how the internet works, right? And what Google does and what Facebook does and how that site or those platforms function. So we're all at least wise enough, all of us, everyone, left, right, and anywhere in between, right? That, yeah, if Google says that you're just not going to be able to share their links on their site, that's not them doing anything to anybody. That's the Canadian government saying I'm going to force you to pay for what your users do. Once again, that is completely outstripped for anything in terms of what these platforms. There's a reason why they're considered platforms, right? But to pretend that's like I'm not even going to try to think up a scenario or example, I guess, but I mean, just think about the insanity of this. The government and this media outlet are trying to blame Facebook and Google for them are basically using mob tactics when, I mean, talk about projecting, right? Is there anything more mob tactic than the government basically forcing you? You got to pay for this. You got to give this money to this person because I said so. Pay up, right? Now tell me, like I said, that is a mob tactic. That is something that is preemptively used in force. But of course, the way this hack, and that's all that this person deserves in terms of a label here, is trying to suggest the opposite. In case $300 million sounds like a lot of money or that the Canadian government is being draconian, consider this. In 2021, Google and Facebook extracted almost $10 billion in ad revenue from this country. That's according to a report by the Canadian Media Concentration Research Project. First of all, Google and Facebook, nobody are forced to use these things, right? Unlike government, nobody is forced to use Google or Facebook, right? We're forced to use government services that monopolize so many aspects and areas of our economy or even our social lives, right? But nobody's forced to use these social media platforms. So to suggest that they extracted, well, that's quite the play on words, and the fact that they use extracted, right? That's funny. That's funny because there was no forced coercion involved with any of this stuff. But the way they're trying to phrase it is to suggest otherwise. So we're taking 3% here for companies that are not taxed in Canada on this income, as far as I've been able to. For companies that are not taxed in Canada on this income, wait a minute. So we're talking 3% here. For companies that are not taxed in Canada on this income, as far as I've been able to determine. Anyways, 3%. Is that what King George wanted to charge? Like, yeah, Americans will rebel against some foreign authoritarian. They'll accept some authoritarian in their own country, right? It's that in-group preference thing, right? But yeah. Americans are kind of known for not being friendly to external forces, rulers or tyrants trying to impose themselves, even if it's only a 3% imposition on their freedom rights. But yeah, like, come on. It's not like they're strapped for cash. Oh, it's not like you should be able to I should be able to just rob from you. You'll still have money left over. Like, that's just such a government kind of mindset, right? In 2022, they generated combined global earnings of some US $400 billion. That's more than half a trillion in Canadian dollars. Thank you very much in 1 year. So they're very, very successful businesses. That's what happens when you create very successful businesses. By contrast, the business of journalism in Canada is on its knees. Well, this is just the market. What little bit of freedom people do have, and we do have the freedom so far, right? That's the one area of freedom where we get to choose what we consume, or at least so far, right? We're in the gray area now, but so far up until this point, we Canadians have the ability to choose what we pay for and consume in terms of news, right? So the market has said that, oh, you guys have nothing on offer that's really of worth that we're willing to pay for, and that we deem valuable in any way, right? I mean, there's nothing valuable about CBC other than the fact that I get to point out their constant lies, hypocrisy, and propaganda on a regular basis. So there's some tiny benefit, but it's not because they're offering that as a benefit. It's a benefit as a consequence or in spite of that, right? So the fact that the Canadian journalism and the news media in this country are on their knees, well, maybe they should do better. Maybe they should come up with a better business model. Maybe they should start incorporating the idea that you should be, listen to multiple perspectives, opinions, or voices rather than just try to jam one size fits all approach and ideologically driven narratives that comes from one side of the political aisle down everyone's throat. I guarantee you would be much more successful if you tried that. But no. Why do the right thing? Why be prudent? Why take personal responsibility or accountability when you could just use government to clobber everyone over the head, take their money, and prop yourself up, right? Is that what it means to be Canadian in 2023? Is it really what it means to be Canadian in 2023? Is that, because if it is, once again, not feeling the love here, not feeling that national pride is, and that's another weird thing. Are we even supposed to have it? I don't know. The lefties have a real issue with that themselves, I see. According to available public financial statements, Postmedia and Torstar have cut over $600 million from their annual payrolls in the last dozen years. Bell Media just slashed 1,300 jobs and closed 6 radio stations. Sounds like they're not doing so well. Sounds like in the marketplace of ideas, they don't have much on offer and they're not getting much reception from the Canadian people. Oh, but don't worry. Government is going to step in and impose and force us to consume that stuff. Yeah, that's going to work out real well. Once again, you'll see another government initiative, whether it's Bill C-11 and Bill C-18, you're going to see how both of them are going to fail and fall flat on their faces in that attempt. I'll tell you that right now. Mark my words. Those journalists pay taxes in Canada. They're extorted for a certain amount of their income. Maybe if they weren't heavily extorted, have their income heavily extorted, maybe they'd be in much better financial positions, right? Maybe, right? Hashtag taxation is theft. They support schools and hospitals and pensions. They report on childcare, cancer, municipal councils, and climate. They deliver verified, fact-checked information to voters. Well, there's your problem. You treat Canadians as dumb fucks, as ignorant morons that need some fact checker, some Orwellian concept in terms of fact checking to tell them how to think, or should I say, what to think. You think that might have anything to do with the fact that Canadians are like, yeah, I don't want that shit. I don't want to be treated like a child. I want to be treated like the adult I am. That might have something to do with it. But no, disregard any advice or common sense, reason, logical arguments from someone like myself. No, just continue on. Double down on using force as your means to an end. I'm sure that'll fix it. Government will fix it for sure, right? Mm-hmm. Tech giants are using mob tactics to strangle Canadian media. Garosino writes for National Observer. Whatever. They volunteer on kids, sports teams, and in soup kitchens. Oh my God. Like, do you see how they're playing? Oh, we must care for them. Like, what? Just, and it still isn't working. So I guess all your rhetoric still apparently is falling by the wayside. So, but yeah, just keep doubling down. Sure, if you just say it 1,000 more times, was it Catherine McKenna? I'm sure they'll finally get the message. They shop in local businesses. They live here. Their money stays here. They're Canadian. Journalism holds the lifeblood of democracy and it's bleeding out in the streets. Like, just, oh my God, the play on words. That's like I say, drama queens and kings, like really actors, the left. What the one thing that they seem to have massively supreme at is just identity politics and emotional laden dribble, garble, and propaganda. That's top notch as far as that goes. Top notch, top of their field. While we squabble about which ambulance to take, foreign tech behemoths are chasing it down to bludgeon it more in case it's not dead yet. And we're supposed to cave to this? Make no mistake, this attack is a proxy fight by these tech giants. A very similar bill, the California Journalism Preservation Act, is making its progress towards passage in the state with bipartisan support. It's facing similar threats, no doubt, because legislation everywhere will do the same. In other words, the world is watching how we respond. This is going to be painful, but we can't back down. Every time we ceded ground to social media giants, it's come back to bite us. We have more power than we think in this fight. Given all the damage they've done, all the lies and rage and misinformation they've spread for traffic and money, they should count their blessings that they're not facing the licensing surcharge that functions like a tax on tobacco. Meanwhile, we can all switch to Bing or one of the other good search alternatives to Google. If this were up to me, I'd have 3 words about Facebook Google. Hit them harder. You do you. Go Bing yourself away. Bing away. Like, once again, if they want to pony up, if Microsoft wants to put themselves at the mercy of losing even more market share to the behemoth like Google, chances are they probably won't either. So be careful who you're praising there. That might turn around and bite you in the ass too. But once again, who are these people in terms of trying to be consistent anyway? That's just not their strong suit, right? Scrolling over to the feed here, folks, see what's going on. I'm going to actually scroll right down to the bottom, see if we got some new folks in the chat. Yes, we do. Okay. Like a billboard company paying the advertisers to put up the ad. You, I don't know where that was, what that is, but let's see here. Yeah. Yeah, that's true. Good point, Jesus Gonzalez. No matter what name you want to put to it, it's all totalitarianism. Boy, that could be pretty applicable at this point in time because they're literally trying to control every aspect, right? There just doesn't seem to be any area of our social economic life where there's not someone in government or some special interest group just desperately trying to control it, right? Gordon Ramsay, what's going on? Okay, let me go over here. I'd rather be a denier than a dunce. As the old saying goes, don't be a denier, be a diner. That is an inclusive place where everyone dines. right on. Hey, thanks for joining the stream there, Gordon. Really appreciate that. Oh, there we go. Happy Canada Day, Bennett. What do you think about the riots in France? Yeah, that's pretty wild. That's pretty wild, huh? But I gotta say, when I do see these riots taking place, I'm not a fan of riots. This is the crazy thing is, I, of course, we are talking about France, right? So they went through their own violent revolution in the past, and it seems that sadly some things never changed. Listen, I get the anger and the frustration. The problem is causing all this damage to like infrastructure or causing harm to others. Like, whether you're in France or any country around the world, could you fucking at least focus your attention on the very people that are imposing themselves on you and stop causing harm to people who haven't? It's the problem with riots, whether you're talking about the US, like Black Lives Matter stuff, going into stores or tearing down things or smashing windows or how in the fuck do you think that all you're doing is giving government the ability to put a big spotlight on you and say, look at these degenerates. To me, it's just apparently they just haven't figured it out. And you would think over there in Europe, they've had like thousands of years to get out and ahead of us. But apparently that is why those of us in North America are separate from our European counterparts. Not saying we're perfect in any way, that's for sure. But it seems at least we're a little bit further along the ideal or the ideas landscape in terms of what's a good method. Like libertarians, like, okay, perfect example, New Brunswick. Yeah, of course you can try politics if you can, like get into politics, try change from the inside, but don't rely on that. But and of course, riding, no. How about we have such things such as the New Brunswick Free Province Project, where we just get a whole lot of people moving to jurisdictions where that freedom could actually be put into place without any top-down authoritarianism, central planning, or coercive control, right? That's a great idea, right? Or how about creating spaces in different areas of the country where you can help people out who are suffering as a consequence of this top-down micromanagement and central planning, right? All of these great ideas, creating systems that function alongside rather than tearing everything down, just create something new that's more conducive or beneficial with aligning with liberty or freedom, right? Those seem like a better idea than let's just burn it all down, right? That just seems like the stupidest fucking idea ever. But I will say, at least it puts some kind of at least it gets them in the media, I guess, where it's like, well, there's something transpiring and taking place over there. But once again, I've seen that the yellow the was it Jean whatever the yellow vest movement, and all it took was they go out and they do these stupid things, then they just get the mindless order followers out there in large numbers to beat them down, use massive violence, and the citizens will stand back and allow it to happen. Why? Because they kind of deserve it. Well, look at what they're doing. Well, like I say, it just seems like not just an extreme waste of resources, right? But an extreme waste and massive amount of destruction that will serve nobody well. Oh, that's my thoughts, my initial thoughts, anyways. But once again, thank you for joining the live stream there, Gordon. I think they're absolutely fucking nuts, to be honest with you. Like I say, I think people need to start thinking outside the box, right? Start to be more innovative and creators in their ways of getting out from underneath this shit, right? I mean, come on. We live in the age of information. We live with so much at our disposal to think that you just got to go back to, I don't know, burning witches or carrying around tiki torches and shit, or I don't know. Like I say, that's antiquated shit. Let's truly progress in our minds and how we get out from underneath a big government, right? That's my thoughts on it. Anyways. And every plant in our system is trending to warming. Well, this is another thing, folks. It's a natural cycle. We all know when you're talking about climate change, we all know. I mean, every one of us learned this in school, or at least those of us were paying attention, even tacitly, right? That yes, the earth has gone through warming cycles, cooling cycles. I mean, why do you think there was such thing as the Ice Age? Well, because it got really, really cold in comparison to contrast to other points in history and not just the country, but around the globe, around the world, right? Same with in terms of the other way, it got way hotter, right? But what is it? I mean, all humans survive to this day without all of the amazing things that we have at our disposal these days, all that, right? All the humans in the past, they had nothing but what? Sticks, right? And their puny little minds and stuff, right? Barely clothed, barely living on subsistence, barely living in terms of subsistence and stuff. They figured it out, right? If the parts of the globe were getting too hot there, well, they moved elsewhere. If parts of the globe were too cold, well, they moved there. It's called adapting. In long terms, it's called evolving. But in short-term settings, right, it's adaptation. It's called using your fucking mind, right? Or even just what nature give you. But no, don't think that way. No, we got to use government. Government's always the answer, right? The minute someone tells me the government's the answer, is like, well, what the fuck? It was a stupid fucking question then. Where you haven't thought about this for fucking 2 seconds at all, have you? If you're saying the government's the answer, well, here, just take my money, right? No, like I say, no. And yes, of course, this is the thing. Why is there no conversations taking place? People just say, once again, just label them. Denier. You're a denier, man. Well, why don't you sit down and have a conversation? I'll tell you why. Because the minute they sit down and have a conversation with someone who is intellectually astute and has the capacity to defend their ideas, who push back against the climate change narrative, we're all going to die, right? Well, you would see a reasonable person, or even someone that's maybe not so reasonable, once you've heard a reasoned argument from someone, even if you consider them your opponent, you'll never forget that. And your brain will try to acknowledge reality, even if you try to fight it. That's what they're worried about, is they don't want truth and real information, real dialogue, real debate take place, because then it destroys the facade that they've built up. And they've worked really, really hard to build up this facade, right? It will be very fitting if Trudeau is taken down by a man named Pierre. Actually, that would be quite ironic, wouldn't it? That would be. That's kind of funny. Good point. Good point. All right, just gonna scroll down to the bottom once again. Let me see here. So yeah, we're pushing up on 2 hours there, folks. So I'm probably going to tie up this stream once again. Really appreciate all you diehards that do see my streams. And once again, I apologize if I haven't been doing too much lately. I haven't been doing a whole lot at all, but these are the in my working hard in terms of my actual occupation, my job. But I have a tremendous amount of things that this is the time of the year that I try to get done. I just helped my son get his Firebird all rigged up. He's got it's an old Firebird, just like the 77, 78, the Smokey and the Bandit car. Basically, it's that. The only thing it doesn't have is the bird, and he's contemplating whether he's going to go that route or not. But yeah, we got it rigged up. It's a decently built 350 in it. There's still some things that have to be done, but we were even contemplating taking it up and do a little drag races this weekend, because they had more of a free for all type of drag race event where it was going to be a bigger event, but it kind of got canceled. So they were allowing just some testing and tuning. But once again, a lot of other things came up. I actually am having issues with my daily driving car. So I've got that. I actually just took that down today to see what kind of damage it's going to cost to see to get that fixed. Hopefully not too much, but yeah, this is just a really bad time of the year. But once again, just always keep in mind that I'm here. I'm in the background somewhere, someplace. I'm still paying attention. I'm never going to go away entirely. I'm always going to stick around, and it'll just depend on the time of the year, or even a particular season in how much time I have to do these things. But as long as you're following me on your favorite social media platforms, you'll always get access to the kind of stuff I upload and the information I provide. So thank you, folks. And once again, I will probably, I mentioned before I was going to try to get back into interviews, but like I say, because my timing and schedule, it's just really hard to do that right now. So that's probably going to have to wait a bit till a little bit later on, maybe towards the end of summer kind of thing. But I am definitely looking forward to reaching out and having conversations with lots of other folks. But like I say, that might have to be towards the end of the summer. Yeah. Yeah, Google should boycott the Liberal government. Yeah, right on. Hey, thanks for joining the live stream there, Darren Chicock, 442. Really appreciate that. Let's see what else you got to say. Regarding Bill 18, like a billboard company paying for advertisers to place their ad up on the billboard, or City Transit paying Apple for the iPhone ads on the side of the bus. Yeah, yeah, yeah. Right on. Thanks for pointing that out. France seems to remember history. Maybe they fear the guilty. Yeah, that's funny, David. Nice to be here. Oh, thank you, Ben White. Thank you for joining the stream once again. Appreciate that. Was just asked to rate this live stream on YouTube. Anyone else? Well, I would really hope if you did that you would give it a great rating, right? Because not only once again has my content been typically quite suppressed, as you folks know, and I probably haven't helped myself out by constantly challenging the status quo. I don't make things any easier on myself, but that is what it is. But anyways, yeah, if there's anything that you folks can do, like I say, to help when I do, try to get this information out, because when it does happen, like even today, I uploaded on Twitter. I'll just say this and I'll tie it up. I uploaded on Twitter, which I've done many, many times for many, many years now, the whole history of the income tax in Canada. If you go to the links that I put on Twitter, which aren't too hard to find, you'll see the whole thing right there, where you can go back to the wartime.ca and get linked to all that information when there wasn't even an income tax in Canada prior to 1917. And yeah, there was such things as roads and schools and hospitals and all that stuff. But these are just things that once again, it's great to see. And there's so many Canadians that aren't even privy to this information. Now, there's so many people that I've had hundreds and hundreds of them. What was it like? I think I'm up to almost 40,000 views. I've had over 1,000 likes and 700 some retweets. Anyways, it's been getting a lot of traction, but there's a lot of people say, I wasn't aware of this. I was not aware of the fact that in Canada, there was no such thing as an income tax prior to 1917. And even then, the income tax was introduced as a temporary war measures. It was actually called the War Measures Act, and it was supposed to be a temporary thing to pay for World War I. But as we know, and it was only a few percent tax on wealthy individuals and corporate and businesses, right? So, and that was even when it was started. Think about where we're at today, where the government basically takes more in terms of taxes, and not just income taxes from you, than what you pay to keep food in your belly, a roof over your head, and all the energy you consume, and the clothes on your back. I mean, when government is taking more than that, hashtags, not only is taxation is theft, hashtag taxation is extortion, but if 100% of your income is slavery, well, what point shouldn't zero mean freedom, right? Because anywhere in between, if someone's taking money against your will without your express implied permission, well, you're not truly free then, are you? And they're using that money to impose their will on you. That's a massive detriment. The income tax alone would be a great step if we could eliminate that. That's something that Canadians, because it's not needed or necessary, folks. I assure you of that. But that is something that Canadians, and I'm glad there's hundreds, potentially thousands of Canadians today that are starting to think about these things, thankfully, as a consequence of just one tweet from someone like myself. And think about what each and every one of us individuals bring to the table and how much we can help affect and change people's minds and opinions and perspective on these things if we continue to do what we're doing. And I'm definitely going to continue doing what I'm doing. And I know you folks will as well. So anyways, you folks have a good day. Enjoy the rest of your long weekend while it lasts. And I'll see you in the next live stream. It's Canadian Libertarian.